Today on the program, we will be looking at the security situations in Nigeria as the country is set to go to the polls tomorrow in a general election. The country's security situation remains precarious as the intense rivalry among the three major parties has heightened tensions across the nation, exacerbated by candidates' ethnic, religious and regional affiliations and their incendiary rhetoric that has polarized the electorate. We have more details in this report.
It's barely 24 hours to the all-important presidential and National Assembly elections in Nigeria, and a lot is at stake in Africa's biggest nation. One of the issues topmost on the minds of the electorate, and one which attracted a lot of debate and reaction in the last 8 years, is security.
This country is something else. They just burnt our votes.
Nigeria has a history of violent elections, but in recent times, there have been more peaceful polls held in the country, thanks to the efforts of security agents. While recency favors a peaceful outcome on Saturday, and candidates also signing a peace accord that will see them agree with the results of the election, Nigerian locals are skeptical about smooth possibilities. The men vying for office are some of the country's most eminent and powerful politicians, and most ever, the future of Nigeria stares its citizens in the eye. The military and police have been deployed round the country to ensure smooth, free, fair and credible elections, but doubts persist, and the memories of previous elections still linger. As Nigerians head to the polls to elect their next set of leaders, we look at the security challenges, potential brick walls, and how to beat these problems on Saturday. Nigeria can lean on its experience from the continent, but more than ever, the world is watching proceedings in the country.
Now it's time to introduce my guest on tonight's discussion. I have Dr. Dennis Amachree, he is the former DSS director at a security consultant. He joins us from Lagos State. Also on the program today, I have Seyi Adetayo, a security and intelligence expert. And from the Ghanaian capital, Accra, I have Mutaru Mumuni Mukhtar, he is executive director, West Africa Center for Counterterrorism. Gentlemen, a warm welcome to you all, and thanks for joining me in the program. Now, I'd like to start with Dr. Dennis Amachree. The Nigerian Independent Electoral Commission said there were 50 attacks on the regional offices and other facilities since 2019. Armed Conflict Location Event Data, ACLED, indicates this is a gross underestimate, with the minimum being 134 attacks. What's your assessment of the security situation in Nigeria as we head towards the polls tomorrow?
Thank you for having me. First of all, I'm not a doctor, so not yet.
Great.
So we look at the attacks on INEC, and there are so many across the country, 50 at different locations, different states. Now, this shows that there are people who are targeting the Electoral Commission to make sure that the elections don't hold. And for their various different reasons, they've been trying to do this. And at the same time, there is a serious challenge about how many policemen or security people that could secure these facilities. Now we try to see if we are actually evolving, because if you look back all the way to 2015, things were not like this, although we still have those attacks and stuff like that, but they are improving. In fact, we will come to a level where we don't have to go and start attacking, because when you attack an ENEC office or burn it down, will not stop the elections. So I think we're evolving. And now, as soon as we move towards technology, I think it is going to be a better deal.
From Ghana, Mukhtar, Dennis Amachree seems to see the glass half full than empty, and he sees progress in the way we run elections when it comes to security. So, Mukhtar, what are the specific security risks that Nigeria's 2023 elections face, and how might these risks differ from previous elections? Okay, I would like to direct that question to Sheyi, as we're having connection issues with Mukhtar. Now, Sheyi, what are the specific security risks that Nigeria's 2023 elections face, and how might these risks differ from previous elections?
Okay, thank you very much. I think one of the major risks is attack on INEC facilities, which Mr. Dennis Amachree just speak on. The truth here is attacks on INEC facility is not new. The difference between what we have now and what we had in the past is attacks were done on election day. The INEC facilities were set ablaze or polling units attacked. But we experienced this time around, we started experiencing attacks several months even before the election. Another major issue that we might be confronted with tomorrow is interception of election materials before it gets to the polling units. If the security agencies can do well enough to protect that, then the next challenge will be, how do we secure the process that's from hoodlums who want to attack the polling units and take away or snatch away ballot boxes? If we are able to do that, another challenge is to ensure that those that are saddled with coalition and transmitting of results do not go behind to do something else. We've seen cases where electoral officials tried to smuggle results out without allowing the party agents to sign and get their own copies, insisting that there is an order that it should be brought to the collation center. That is another risk. Then, let's say everything everything went fine, no problem. Results start trickling in. The biggest challenge confronting us right now is fake news. There are lots of young people. Now, this is not coming from politicians now. We're talking of young people that are so devilish-minded that they can create something out of nothing, put it on social media, and they create tension. We've seen young people digging up old videos that are not related at all, or related video, give it a new label, and then try to use it to create tension. I'm really concerned about flow of information from 6 p.m. tomorrow. How government will ensure that the social media is not used as a platform to incite violence. It just takes one person with an evil mind to put one very big fake news right there, and then people start sharing it, and the next thing is that everywhere is on fire. So those are the major risks. And it's also important too that at every stage in this process, the politicians, those who are contesting, should be reminded that what they say is important. Even when they are not in agreement with the process, they should be matured enough to caution what they say. We've seen situations where even at the time that politicians want to vote, some contestant makes incendiary comments that could, set everywhere on fire. And of recent too, even probably today and yesterday, I've seen supporters of some candidates coming on here on national TV, making comments that are bogus, comments that they do not have facts to back up, already insinuating that the election has already been stolen. That is a Trump style.
So media houses do have a responsibility to check the kind of messaging that is going out, not just the people and these politicians.
You see, one thing is for media houses to say we are distancing ourselves from what the person says. Another is for them to right there at that moment make a counter claim and stop the interview. That is the best way going forward to handle it. A spokesperson for a candidate just said on national TV, election has been stolen. That is, too big.
Okay.
And we don't have another country. This is the only country we have. So everybody, we must be responsible enough. There are processes for you to challenge, things that you say are not going in the right way. And we'll see our courts doing justice to that.
Thank you, Sheyi. I'd like to bring in Mukhtar from Ghana. Mukhtar, Sheyi just said, he talked about social media. We live in an information age that everything travels so fast and is amplified. Now, looking at elections, not just in Nigeria and Africa, the fact that we're having this discussion is an anomaly, because elections are civic exercises. Individuals should go out and vote according to their conviction and get back to work. It's not a public holiday in most other climes. So what is it about elections in Africa? There were elections in Kenya last year. We felt the pulse, the tension. You could feel it all through the electioneering period. The elections in Zimbabwe, Nigeria goes to the polls tomorrow. What is it about elections in Africa that makes it look like a do-or-die affair? And why is it heavily militarized? And why do you always talk about security and the propensity for violence?
First of all, in Africa, the fortunes of the people are inherently linked to politicians and political leadership. And so nearly everyone's, fortunes or interest or business or social aspects of life is linked to leadership decisions. And so it is normal that people will be interested in who gets elected. If you notice, in most parts of Africa, the single largest employer is government, and it's politicians who make these decisions. When a politician wins power, he creates an economy around himself or herself, and those who are assigned or associated with this politician get to participate in that economy. So the stakes are high, and everybody is interested in how they get their man, their woman, or person elected. Of course, you talk about social media and fake news. And interestingly, fake news is not just an African phenomenon in terms of its security implications or the dimensions of security relating to fake media, fake news. You notice in the last 10 years, fake news has featured as a security threat in many elections all over the world. Prominently, you talk about the US elections and some European elections. And so it is normal that you would find it prominently feature in security analysis when it comes to elections in Africa. And also, when it comes to elections in Nigeria, this is the single biggest, population in terms of elections in this part of the world in West Africa. And the stakes are very high. So you would, normally see that being a source of concern. And I hear talk about the various features that can constitute security threats, and very, very precisely. At the moment, I think many analyses point to the fact that we seem to be in a better place than we were in the 2015 elections when it comes to security. There have been some attacks and some situations of insecurity, but it's not the same as where we were in 2015. There's a much better situation. But we are not out of the woods yet. The single biggest challenge will come on election day in the process of voting, the availability of ballot boxes and papers and all election materials available at the right time, and ensure that people will access and actually participate in the process freely. The next layer, and I'm speaking broadly about the security issues, the next layer is the process of counting the results and declaring the results. These are situations of potential post-election violence situations, which is, very well bound to happen, because the fatigue of loss or potential of a loss would, elicit high emotions. And if they are not designed to deal with these emotions, that is where the insecurity would set in. And we need to put in all kinds of guards to prevent this from escalating or marring the beauty and the credibility of the elections.
Thank you, Mukhtar. I'd like to bring back Dennis in Lagos, Nigeria. Now, Dennis, Nigeria has had a few up-cycle elections in Anambra, Ekiti, and Osun states, where the government had the luxury of deploying a high number of security personnel. But tomorrow, the entire federation will be voting, and they won't be able to afford that luxury. So how can the government ensure that the whole country is secured, given the limited numbers of its security personnel? Can you kindly unmute your mic, please? Thank you. Yes. Okay, we're trying to establish connection from our own end. But
can you hear me now?
Okay, I can hear you. Perfect.
All right. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
It is a situation where we don't have to just inundate a place with security personnel. But if you change your strategy and come up with a kind of process or tactics whereby these security people can be deployed, then you should be able to cover up everywhere. It is not throwing people at it, but it depends on how you tactically deploy them. So Nigeria, right now, they are deploying about 428,000, or just a little bit above that, for this particular election. In other elections, they go ahead and then have the whole people coming in there and doing the same thing and making sure that no problem.
But is that adequate, looking at our population? 98 million Nigerians are going to the polls. Nigeria has a population of over 200 million. So if you look at the percentage, it's quite minuscule.
The population is nothing to write home about. We've been talking about it. Everybody has been talking. Even Sheyi there will tell you that everybody has been talking about it. Egypt, which is almost like half of our population, they have about 1 million policemen, which we don't have. Yes. So with the kind of numbers we have, we've been begging, or should I say advocating, for more policemen to be recruited, double if possible. But finally the police, either because of logistics, because of the funds to keep them, because it's not just recruiting them. You have to keep them, you have to train them, and then, of course, provide the necessary welfare for them. Some people have decided that, okay, why don't we just go state police? Well, that's a story for another time. But this particular situation, we see that they are not enough. But the strategy that the IG has come up with, the military and the DSS, shows that, yes, they can cover the whole area. They can cover it because you don't now start posting too many armed people all over the polling booths. You cannot cover it, number one. Number two, people will be very agitated if they see people with guns. It's like intimidating them. Remember, we have international observers who are here. And these international observers will think that immediately you call out the army, they believe that it's a situation of war. They might not do that, but I think what the Minister of Defense, the Chief of Defense Staff had decided was to mobilize, they are going to be motorized, and then, of course, serve as quick response. And then, of course, from the control room, they can always call in areas that have problems. Okay. So I think they can do it this time.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Now, Sheyi, Dennis ended his submission with areas that have problems. Yes, so let's talk about flashpoints. We can feel the tension in the air, and there's no way it's humanly possible, looking at the limited capacity of our security forces, to just float them, and it's not the smart thing to do, like Dennis alluded to. So what are the potential flashpoints where violence could erupt? We're not praying for violence to erupt, but what are these flashpoints in areas around the Federation where you're concerned about security?
One thing about this election is that it's going to be a little bit different from what we've had in the past. We usually have 2-horse race. Now we are having 4 horses now. And if you look at the campaign, you'll see that these candidates are, structured along ethnic, religion, and geopolitical structure. The implication of that is that, unlike before, when you can say, oh, okay, problem may likely happen in the north or in the south. For example, in 2015, it was majorly between a Fulani northerner from the north and a Ijaw southerner from Bayelsa that was contesting. So you can easily, but for what we're having right now, it's about, and the analysis I've been doing is concentrating on candidates losing, not who wins. If this candidate fails to win, what will happen? If this candidate fails to win, what will happen? And that is my major concern. My concern is not really about what transpired between 8:30 tomorrow morning and 6 p.m. It's about what happened after 6 o'clock tomorrow. It's largely about what candidate says and what candidates say. If the PDP should lose, where do we think that crisis might come from? If APC should lose, where do we think crisis might come from? If Labour Party candidate loses the election, are we expecting crisis to come from? And the same thing with NNPP. So we have to look at this realistically and plan ahead. Unfortunately, just like Mr. Dennis said, police do not have the capacity to cover all polling units with armed men. So what they've done is to put policemen that are not armed at different polling units. They create a patrol team with armed personnel that will be patrolling around several polling units to give them backup. So I see that working. One, the unmilitarized nature of the polling unit will allow people to easily come out and feel free to exercise their franchise. And the presence of armed men on the major road trying to patrol will give some form of comfort that if dangers are coming, they can easily intercept them before they get to their polling unit. That is not to say that we might not going to have cases where some hoodlums will penetrate and try to do the bidding. But this is more of a larger kind of an election where those who are contesting are not really grassroots people. No presidential candidate can be a grassroots politician all over Nigeria. You're only relying on people to help you. Yes. Now, those who are going for senatorial are covering a wide area, and the same thing with House of Rep. So where we may begin to have issues at the polling is going to be the second election, where we are going to have people for House of Assembly and governorship that are grassroots politicians. That's when we can start saying people want to show their paymaster that they are delivering their ward, they are delivering their polling unit. But the major concern for tomorrow's election is what people say after the vote has been cast.
Thank you very much. I'd like to bring in Mukhtar into the conversation. Now, Mukhtar, the presence of former Assistant U.S. Secretary of State for African Affairs, John Carson, is leading the American Election Observation Mission in Nigeria. We also have the head of the AU Observation Mission, former South African President Thabo Mbeki and Uhuru Kenyatta. It signals the importance of this upcoming election. Some analysts have called it Nigeria's most important election since the return to democratic governance and the international community's commitment to a credible electoral process. Now, Mukhtar, what specific benchmarks will the observation mission use to evaluate the credibility of the election, and how will their findings be communicated to the Nigerian authorities and other relevant stakeholders?
Well, clearly, what we are seeing is a demonstration of how big, how important Nigerian democracy is to the region and to the world. And Nigeria has always been a very important player, but it feels more important when there are signs that Nigeria is beginning to get things right. And so, for me, these developments are a manifestation of the fact that Nigeria is on the path, or seem to be on the path, of taking its rightful place. In terms of practices and standards, of course, they will be looking at the electoral processes, the campaign processes, the processes that lead to elections, and the process of voting, the process of declaration of results, and also the aftermath in the declaration of results. These are all stages and parameters that have been developed by the various missions that are here, European observer missions, and the various African institutions that come in as observer missions, including these leaders you mentioned that have come in here. And so we are interested in the process that is free, that is fair, that allows choice and multiplicity of choice for people to vote and vote freely, and that the declaration process is transparent, and that people who lose would act in good faith in accepting the results. People who win would be faithful enough and generous enough to be measured in the way they go about, in celebration of victory. Because at that point, the issues of fatigue of a loss, it is huge and can actually undermine, the entire exercise that should be beautiful. So I think that these are key things we are looking at the moment. I think so far, people seem to be okay with what has happened so far. Of course, there are some breaches that have taken place. At the moment, the key thing has to do with language. And I would make reference to the fake news that Shay and I talked about earlier. Language is key in issues of violent production. Language shapes behavior. And so the sort of language you use as leaders has a huge impact in shaping the behavior of your followers. And we've seen it used in many ways in elections in Brazil, elections in the US, and elections in some European countries. How words and language is weaponized, grievances are weaponized and used against the people, or to provide or produce violence. And so those things in general will be key in measuring the outcomes of the elections.
Thank you, Mukhtar. We still have quite a lot to cover. If you're just joining, this is Secure the Continent, a News Central television, and we've been discussing security challenges ahead of Nigeria's general elections tomorrow. Stay with us. We'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll still have so many areas to cover as we count down to the big polls tomorrow. Stay with us.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
You're welcome back to Secure the Continent. If you're just joining us, we've been discussing the security situation in Nigeria ahead of its general elections tomorrow. And I still have with me on this discussion, Dennis Amachree is a former DSS director and security consultant. I also have Sheyi Adetayo, a security and intelligence expert, and from Accra, Ghana, I have Mukhtar, the Executive Director, West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. Gentlemen, thanks for staying with us on this very important conversation. And now, Dennis, earlier this week, the 18 presidential candidates of Nigeria's general elections have signed a second peace accord in the capital, Abuja, in a bid to prevent unrest surrounding tomorrow's polls. They signed one in September, but since September, we saw the assassination of a Labour Party gubernatorial candidate in Enugu a few days ago. We also saw attack on Labour Party members in Lagos State. Now, the pact is to ensure the conduct of free and fair, credible, transparent and verifiable elections, cognizant of the need to maintain a peaceful environment before, during and after the general elections, and to place national interest above. My question to you, Dennis, is what impact will this peace pact have on the people who might want to foment trouble? And does it really have any impact beyond its symbolism?
Thank you for that question. You see, these peace accords, as far as I'm concerned, are not effective. They're not effective in the sense that you saw all the 18 party candidates and their chairman who came to swear an oath. Now, they will be ready to do peace. In fact, after the meeting, you see all of them shaking hands and exchanging jokes and stuff like that. But their boys who are out on the streets believe that their principal must win. You know, so they see it as a do or die affair. You know, so it becomes ineffective when they will do things like this and it goes away down. We have situations where a senatorial candidate in Enugu was killed, burned down. Now, we don't have any response to that. There were some people that were attacked in Lagos. We don't have any arrests, you know, all over the country. So if there is no consequence in this accidents, or should I say, these attacks, then the peace accord does not make any sense. So there must be some kind of consequence management where they have to be, you know, even party leaders and the presidential candidates should be made accountable.
Some level of punitive measures you suggest. I also want to ask you if this should be stepped down, because Sheyi talked about grassroots levels, legislative elections and elections that are closer to the people, that also is very important, and violence could actually erupt in those elections. So should the peace accord also come down to this other levels of governance?
I think it should even go down to local government levels. Yes, I agree. Because those are the ones nearer to the people. And you know, when it becomes so emotional, people can just lose their heads. But they have to realize that the elections are elections. After election, we go back to our normal life.
Exactly.
So you find out people, husband and wife, or brother and sister, are falling apart because they believe in different candidates. It doesn't make any sense. And I think even the National Orientation Agency should pound this into Nigerians so that they don't understand. You don't start killing people because you too can die. Nobody has a monopoly of violence. So I think there is another way of ensuring this peace accord. Yes, going down to local governments would be a starting point.
Thank you, Dennis. Now, Sheyi, earlier, you and Mukhtar talked about the propensity for violence to be propagated by social media and digital platforms. But now let's talk about traditional media outlets. How can Nigeria's media outlets and journalists report on election-related violence without inciting further unrest or exacerbating existing tensions? Can you kindly unmute your device, please?
Honestly, I don't really know, again, how journalists are expected to conduct themselves during election. We've seen from the traditional media platform now, we've seen lots of TV stations and their anchor men and women taking sides openly.
Okay, I just want to put. I just want to put this out there. I've been reading the Electoral Act, and we also have a copy of the NBC Code. So I guess it's specific to media organizations. At News Central, we're very professional. Just to put that out there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I also try to be careful not to mention any TV station. We all can see. And this is new to us. Before now, we've seen journalists and media practitioners be neutral and try to, if you're going to take on a candidate, they'll do the same for all the candidates. And they try to stay neutral. But we've seen the way it's going now, and we can't say much because the arbiters or regulators are supposed to be the NBC. So if NBC is not hammering them, it means that it is allowed. We've seen that happening in the United States. Though we know what happens in the US, it's not the same that happens in Nigeria. We've seen where, when you talk of Fox News, you know where they belong.
Exactly.
When you talk of CNN, you know where they belong. And also in advertising in the US, you can attack other brands, but those are not allowed in Nigeria. Our fair competition does not allow that. So you see that we are bringing the system from the United States into our own polity. Do we have what it takes? Because I'm afraid the way some media organizations have done, we'll only know if how Nigeria feels at the end of the day. But you see, they're still a lot better than the social media, so to speak. And no, even as at the level at which some of them are going right now, there's still some level of caution. And they are also seen where the TV station published or broadcasted fake news, and it was recalled and they apologized. We usually don't have this opportunity on social media. So, but I want to see a situation where the NBC will look at the conduct of all journalists involved in this election and be able to review it according to its rules and regulations and try to create, a standard that will not only be known to journalists but to all Nigerians, so we know what to expect. We know whether we have decided to imbibe the American system of politics. Then we should also ask advertisers to imbibe American system, of advertising as well and their own kind of life. If we are, Americanizing Nigeria, but this is alien for us, and I stand bold to say that.
Thank you very much, Sheyi. Now, Mukhtar, just earlier this week, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission of Nigeria, Professor Mahmood Yakub, did say that the number of electorates in Nigeria, 98 million registered voters, is bigger than the entire West African sub-region and parts of Central Africa. That's the largest, most youthful electorate in Nigerian history, and they will be heading to the polls tomorrow to decide in this high-stakes presidential and parliamentary elections. Why is it important to have a violent, free electoral process?
In my security analysis, I often make the point that it appears in West Africa, we would be free one day, and that one day is when Nigeria succeeds and gets everything right about these challenges that we all confront. If Nigeria goes to the polls with this huge number of electorates and comes out successfully, it would not just be a successful story for Nigeria, it would be a success story for the entire West Africa, because Nigeria's presence is strongly felt across the entire West Africa. As we speak, in the last several days, we've been feeling it here in Ghana. People who are associated with Nigerians as friends or business associates, we're feeling the impact of what is going on in Nigeria here. And so when things go right in Nigeria, all of us will feel that impact in terms of economy, in terms of security, and in terms of stability. India is, promoted and projected as the biggest world democracy. And it's about the numbers and the capacity of such a huge country to hold elections successfully. Nigeria can't do that. And if it does that, it should be a great example of how a great nation, a big nation in Africa can succeed in the democratic process and the exercise of elections. I think that all of us who have been looking at this development, especially in the last few days, seem to be quite pleased that it looks like Nigeria is moving towards a trajectory that we can all strongly and positively speak about when it comes to governance, when it comes to democracy, and good governance generally. Of course, we're not there yet, but there's still this significant sense of enthusiasm and goodwill for Nigeria. And I think that we should be able to get a place soon where more and more people will be interested and willing to support and be supportive of Nigeria. We just mentioned moments ago the kinds of figures and groups that are coming into Nigeria to observe and to be able to report and see this process through. It tells you the level of importance that they assign or attach to Nigeria. You've seen a demographic, category, the youth group on social media. That demography has been huge in terms of its feature in this current elections. We're seeing young people who have used social media to promote their ideas, to promote their candidates, and to promote the message. And it appears that that part of that campaign has featured in the way that makes this year's campaign and elections very different. I think for the first time since 1999, we have come to a point where no one is certainly sure that a particular party would emerge victoriously. We all seem to be making an analysis and not sure of who would emerge, as the victor in these elections. That's a very high level of competitiveness Nigerian elections has gotten to. The demography of the youth that feeds on social media, I'm very upbeat. I'm very, very, anxious and waiting to see how it features in the outcomes of the elections. And that all this put together should make a huge statement globally when it comes to democracy and the democratic process in Africa.
Very important points and analysis you just made, Mukhtar. Dennis, you opened the show. It's only proper for me to let you have the final salvo. Now, finally, Dennis, what can be done to ensure that Nigeria's 2023 elections are conducted in a way that is peaceful, transparent, and fair? And what role can different stakeholders play in achieving this goal? Like Mukhtar said, the whole world's eyes and beams are on Nigeria. They're looking up to Nigeria, not just in West Africa, but in the entire continent. Okay, I think we lost Dennis, but Shay, I would like to answer that question.
Sorry, what's the question again?
Okay, I said the world's beam and attention on Nigeria, as Mukhtar said. Now, what can be done to ensure that Nigeria's 2023 elections are conducted in a way that is peaceful, transparent, and fair? And what role can different stakeholders play in achieving this goal?
Well, the basic thing is for us to be patriotic. Love your country. If you love this country, if you love Nigeria, then you will not allow an individual to push you to destroy this country. So I'll call on all Nigerians, let us renew our love for this nation. We don't have other place or any other country to go. Even if you have, certainly you can't have same for every members of your family. So I will plead that while we go out to exercise our franchise tomorrow, we should remember that whatever we do will go a long way in determining the outcome of this election. We should try as much as possible not to incite violence, not to make statements that are capable of setting places ablaze, not to have forward information on social media that we cannot independently or personally verify. And also, I will plead with the traditional stations, the TV station, please do not allow yourself to be used. You are going to be, many of you are going to be bringing politicians to come and analyze the conduct of the election. Please do not allow any of your guests to say things that cannot be substantiated. Even when they can substantiate it, it is not everything that you say as a leader. And that is why I am in support of the peace accord. There's anything the peace accord has done is to help to rally the contestants into a proper place, such that after the election they don't make the kind of comments that gave us what we saw in 2011. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheyi. And on that note, I would like to say a big thank you to Dennis Amachree, Sheyi Aditya, and from Accra, Ghana, Mutaru Umunu Mukhtar. Thanks for being great company. I appreciate your insights and your time. Thank you. Now, Nigeria is Africa's most populous country with more than 200 million inhabitants. Should electoral violence scar the country, deepening its divisions will make the country even more difficult to govern. Smooth and safe elections are thus of crucial importance, not only for advancing Nigerian democracy, but for allowing the country to reassert itself as a leader in West Africa, continental and global affairs. Thank you very much for being a great company. I am Gbenga Aborowa. See you next week on Secure the Continent. Bye-bye.